Hello everyone. I hope everybody's able to hear me okay and see my screen. If not, please send me a question or a chat or anything. Otherwise, we'll be able to start here. So seems like everybody's able to hear me and see the screen okay. So let's start. All right. Thank you again for joining us for one more of our webinars here at CTC. Today we'll be talking about symbolic 2D representations versus 3D modeling. Does it make a difference in a project? My name is Omar Ruiz Miranda and I'm an applications engineer here at CTC. So you have probably heard that it is important to create families with 2D representation of the geometry in plan or elevations. But does it really make a difference? How do we know this? In this session, we'll discuss the ramifications of 2D graphics in a plan versus an origin model. In this session, we will try to understand the and go through these objectives here. Establishing the parameters by which performance can be measured. Generating testing families and projects environments. Running some performance tests to validate performance. What is the issue or the main question here? I come from a background that I was creating a lot of Revit families specifically for manufacturers. So it's we're in a point where we need to balance where what to give to the customer and what to give to the user. The user wants fast families that generate really quick in their projects and don't slow them down. However, manufacturers usually want to put every single little detail in their families and represent everything. So we need to find that balance between the two and provide them both with good families. One of these things that we heard is and that we've been practicing is to add in 2D geometry to replace the 3D geometry in those families in plan view specifically. This helps improve performance, and this demo here, this webinar, is to show the way or a way to test this performance and how it affects our project. This is not like the solution. It's a recommendation of what to do, or maybe another option for you to test your families. Perhaps you have already a way to perform this test. And if this is helpful for you, please go ahead and take advantage of it. So we'll recommend to, first of all, understanding what affects the performance in a project. Also, knowing what to check in those families if the 2D is being used, making sure that the 3D is set up properly as well. And then also having a way to test these families. Let's start by what affects performance in a project. There are many things that affect performance in a project. These things could be model corruption. Model corruption is been known in our experience because I'm in the support team, and then we have a lot of projects that come our way and say, I don't know if you're familiar with this or you heard this before, too many missing elements. Most of the times this error happens because of corrupt families, and that makes the model corrupted as well. So the only way to solve this model corruption is to send it to Autodesk, and they can fix it, and they have the necessary tools to do it. However, if the model is able to be open, we also have tools that can check and find those corrupted families, and then we can make recommendations for that. But at the end, everything comes down to a family being corrupted. So another thing that affects the performance is the model distances. Back in Revit 2010 and before, there was a limit of 2 miles diameter for projects. So the more you have in this project, the longer you have, the more it's going to affect the performance. Now after Revit 2011 and newer, they increased the limit to have 20 miles diameter, and we still get that error message that says you have exceeded the limit of the distance, but however, it does not limit you from going beyond the 20 miles diameter. I haven't seen a model that is that long in my personal experience, but because out of this increase, that's probably users that have that instance where they have models bigger than 20 miles. So another thing that slows performance or affects it is the add-ins and extensions in Revit. If we don't need some add-ins or extensions, they're just there for, maybe we'll use it sometimes. Maybe it's a good idea to just turn them off while we're working on larger projects. Another thing that I was mentioning as well, family corruption. We've noticed sometimes that a family that was created in older versions and is not upgraded yearly, it usually causes corruption. And this is because year to year there are changes in Revit that maybe that feature didn't exist in the previous ones, but maybe it was coded to where if you had a 2011 family and went to 2012, that fix will bring the family back to standards for that year without too much problems. But if we go directly from 2011 to pick a number, maybe 2017, sometimes those differences, 2017 is not going to be looking back at 2012 to see what was different. They just look back to like a year or something to see the things that might get affected. So that's something that we've noticed that affects the families and make them corrupted. And then this causes as well the model corruption. Complex families as well affect definitely the performance. I'll talk about these complex families a little bit here. And the overall amount of complexity of the model, how big, how tall, how many things you have in there, this all affects the performance. So let's talk about the complex families here. 2D symbolic and 3D geometry fall into this group, along with the nested families, the linked parameters, constraints, imported files, voids, formulas, arrays, host openings. All these things together make Revit think more and therefore take longer to generate the geometry. So basically, the more geometry or data that Revit has to calculate, the more time it takes to regenerate it every time there's a change in the project. If we have a few instances of a family and then we need to make a change, then it has to think and regenerate that geometry again every time. So that one of the things here as well, that affects that and hurts the performance is small lines and curves in Revit. Revit doesn't really like that too much, especially curves, because there are a bunch of little tiny lines that all together in different angles make the illusion that it's a curve, but it's technically small lines. So it's a lot of little lines there that Revit has to think about. So what do we need to check in a family if it is being represented in a 2D? When we select the geometry, there's this option that is the visibility settings. Then we have, as you can see here in the little picture here, we have plan, front, back, and left, right. These boxes here allows us to turn the geometry on and off. You can see display in 3D views and these other two-dimensional views. So the geometry always is going to be on in 3D views. There are a couple more things here, or another thing that we can check or uncheck. But this is more for the detail levels of coarse, medium, and fine. If we want to represent the geometry, maybe for coarse we'll create a box, maybe for medium something more a little bit more detail on that box and define maybe a closer representation of that product. So let's open Revit here and explain a little bit more of the what to check in that family. I'd like to explain here. I have a project already set up. I originally started with this just four walls in a roof, nothing special, nothing really big or anything like that. And then I just added these three families. I went ahead and previously set up all my families to represent different configurations. In this case, this family right here represents a family that only 3D geometry is on for 3D views. All the other elevations and plan views are being represented by 2D geometry. This family right here only contains 2D geometry in plan view, and this one doesn't contain anything except the 3D geometry turned on everywhere. Usually we work with these two. I created this one just to for my testing and just go an extra step and see what the performance was with that. But most of the time we'll be talking or creating families with 2D geometry represented in plan view. So I'm going to go ahead and open this family, edit it. I selected this family for the amount of complexity that contains here. Most of these families are nested components that make up the whole family here. And to start, and I'll show some of the a lot of parameters here, dimensions and formulas as well that are driving all the geometry and all the options in this family. We also added some clearance that is being controlled with a label to include or not include clearance. I'm going to hide this one. I just want to go directly to the other geometry. We also included the this warning box. Basically, if something happens in the calculations of the airflow or some of the features here for this family, that if that exceeds limits of the product, that box will turn on and whatnot. And that's being controlled by a visibility parameter and formulas, of course. Everything else here also is nested, as I mentioned. And I want to mention that this nested family can also be controlled with the visibility settings here. However, I would recommend to control the visibility settings in the native geometry where the geometry is generated. So we're going to go and say edit family to see more of the option that I was talking about. In this case, this geometry is being joined, and everything is part of one big group of families or geometries. So as you can see, we have again visibility settings here, and if I open it, this has been already set to not show in plan view. That's what I will go check. So if you have a family that is supposed to be represented by masking regions in plan view, but this is on still, would be a good idea to turn it off so it does not affect the performance once in the project. Otherwise, it's going to be generating the masking region plus the 3D geometry, and we want just the other one, which is going to be faster. And in plan view, of course, we have masking regions representing the actual geometry when we look down to it. As you can see, it's just basic masking region going around the perimeter of this family, another masking region to represent the fans here. We could go with more details and everything, but it's not necessary. So that's the main thing I wanted to point out. This visibility settings right there. Check for those. I'm going to close this family and this one as well. The rest of the families here, the nested components, have been already checked and for that same visibility settings. So I'm going to save that. Okay. Now for testing a family, back in Revit when I was showing you, I had this project with just 4 walls and a roof and those three families. I would consider this my master file, my file that I'm going to reference to when it comes to performance, to moving around, changing views, and making changes, things like that. Now from that master file, I create a copy. I could have done 3 copies and put a family individually, but I just went with 1 file this time. So in this file, I place these families many times, and I will open a file here soon, the one that I was working with. So for our testing parameters or testing standards, we'll just move things from in the master and in the test file. Going back in here to set up this Revit file, I decided to go with filters. In the family, I put a description to each of the families here. In this case, this only represents 2D geometry all the way around. This one represents 2D geometry only in plan view, and this one represents 3D geometry all the way around with no 2D representation, right? And then I went and created a bunch of views based on each one of the families where I wanted to see them and place them. For my 3 different levels, I placed the first one in the first level, the one with the plan view only on the second level, and the one with the 3D in the third level. And well, that's the plan when I go to the testing environment. This is still the master, and I just placed three instances of this, but I'm setting up my views so it's all similar. Again, 3D views, each one filter. The way I created the filters in each one of the views, if I go to this 3D model here, visibility graphics, or VV for the shortcut, or VG. We have my 3 filters that I created. The way I did, I went to filters, edit new, and then I created 3 different filters based on that description parameter that I was showing you for each one. Each one represents or is looking to equals the same description that I gave each of the families. Okay. Once that's done, I can bring them, like add the filter here. Obviously they don't appear here anymore because they're already placed here, but you would be able to choose from here and add them. Once they're all here, turn off the ones we don't want and turn the ones that we want to see only. So I did this process for all 3D views and the elevation views. This one I did not need to because one is different levels, so I won't see them all at once. Okay, so now let me open the test project. Let's go to my other screen and get that project. Okay, here's my my test with all the families. First thing I did, I already had those 3 families. I placed them on first level, second level, and third level, and then I arrayed them all. I'm going to open this view and show you, for example, what I did. So in the first floor plan, where I have the family with everything 2D around in plan view, I placed the first one right here in the corner and arrayed it up or to the back or to the top of the screen, however you want to look at it. I arrayed it 50 times, and then I took all the array and arrayed it to the right 50 times again. So I have a total of 2,500 families here, or instances of that family only. I did the same for all the other families. So a total in this project, I have 7,500 families that are being filtered for the views that I'm on. So in each view, I will be seeing only 2,500 at a time. So I did that for this family, for the other family, and the one that contains the 3D in all of them. And the way I wanted to test is based on the master file. I can move around. I can open views, zoom in and out, orbit on the 3D views here, and see how much it takes to to move around or change or create something and Revit to generate this geometry again. So let's start by just zooming in and out of this one, and we'll see the difference. So notice that when I'm zooming in, the lines, they go away for a moment if I grab my screen around. And this, I noticed that there's something in Revit that it does when all the geometry is just 2D. It does that. It's like something that Revit does in order to let you be faster in this view. But you see, once you let go of the mouse, it generates the geometry right away. Now we're seeing is just the 2D, because even though I'm on the shaded with edges style, all I see is just the black and white representation. Okay, so let's go open the other one. This is the one where only the plan view contains geometry. Notice that I can move around. The geometry doesn't go away. It's very fast, almost instant movement. I'm moving my mouse and I have no slowness here. And notice in the graphical part, it changes from like a circle to a square when I'm moving around. That's again another thing in Revit that allows us to generate faster. Now if I go to 3D all, where there's no 2D representation, now I don't know if you notice here, even to open the views it takes longer. The other ones were like, what, like 3 seconds to open. This one is taking, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds and counting. So there we go. Finally it opened, and then I start zooming in, just the same test as the other two views, and you can see how long it takes to generate that geometry again. Now I have to wait until everything is generated, and I can move around again and wait for it to do its calculations, and it's frustrating if you're working on a big project. Therefore we put the plan, the masking regions on those ones, so it does make a difference. If we go into 3D views, I didn't see, based on my test, didn't see too much of a difference on generating the geometry. It's still a little slow because of the amount of families in this, but once it's open, you can still move really quickly, and there's no really a big difference between the 3 different views here. I don't know if you can hear my computer now, but it's the fan inside is going super fast. It's going a little crazy here. Once it opens again, I have no problem moving it around. But still, the initial problem or the initial slowness is when opening the views, which we're going to be working on that on a big project, opening views, going from plan view to 3D and see everything that needs to be changed, I don't know how everything is looking. If I go to this family that contains 3D geometry everywhere, it does not change the performance based on the other two views there. But it seems like it takes a little longer to open as well. So, and this makes sense because the 3D geometry shows in these views all the time. The performance is more noticeable in the plan views. And also here, if we go to the south, okay, this one is slowing down, maybe also because of the amount of views that I already have open as well. But it's taking a while to regenerate. I'm gonna close the other ones. Yeah, I can move, and you can see the same behavior of taking away that geometry and showing it again when I let go of the mouse. Let's go to the next one. Notice how much it's taking to open. Finally it open, and start moving around here. So again, it's slow. Something that I wouldn't want to be dealing with every time, but it's still a little faster than if I was going to go and let everything on 3D here. Okay. So I'm moving my mouse, moving the view to the right, and I have to wait for it to move. Okay. I'm just going to exit this view now. I'm just going to go to regular. I turn everything off in this view so I can just show it quickly. Okay, I have a question here that if when you're in a plan view showing just 3D only family, do you get the same results when zooming and panning if you were in a hidden line versus shaded? I would say that it is the performance would increase here because we're changing the visual style. So even all the 3D geometry, if we have it or not, it's just going to change that. It's like turning off that geometry there as well. So let's test that really quickly here. As this is opening, when I was testing this project, my Revit crashed a few times just by making some of the changes here. The error that I was getting, it was related to video graphics, and then I searched online, and one of our recommendations was to upgrade or update the graphics cards, or install the latest from Microsoft, the DirectX, I believe it's called. So I did those two things and nothing changed. My Revit still was crashing. And then the other recommendation was to turn off this option right here under graphics. It's called user hardware acceleration. So I had to turn this off in order to continue not crashing my Revit. So if that is helpful for you, if you're experiencing those type of crashing moments or something for Revit, try that one first and see if that helps. Okay, so it opened here. Let's put it in hidden lines. Okay, so this one, it's a little better than just showing the 3D, but it's still not as fast as showing a 2D plant view with, as you can see, it still needs time to regenerate all that stuff. Okay, so it helps, but it's not as fast as the other one. Now I have a question. They want to see again the differences between moving this part with the all-around 3D or 2D geometry versus the 2D plant view only. You can see this one. No problem. This one even works better, in my opinion. All right. So as seen here, does it really make a difference? And based on this test that we did, it does make a difference. I would like to share some of the things that I was taking note of as I was creating this test. Basically, the three families that I had placed in here. Let me go back to the master. So let's start with this family. And even before this project, I had a project just with the walls and roof that I started with. I saved it. That file was 7.54 megabytes. Okay, that would be my starting point. Then the families, I will tell you the file size on these families. So the first one that contains 2D geometry all the way around and on plan, it was 2 megabytes. Okay, and this is the biggest size that we between these three files. The second one were only masking regions and 2D representations in plan view. This was smaller, which is 1.86 megabytes. And we have the last one where only contains 3D geometry. This was 1.41 megabytes. And the reason is because this one we added more content. Even though it's 2D representation, that's still content that needs to be added to it. It helps in the performance side of the equation here, but not in the file size. So when I added these three files in size, the total was 5.27 megabytes. So I would have expected to increase my file size, the one that we're currently seeing, to increase at least 5 megabytes. But that was not the case. The file size on the one you're seeing here is 12.2 megabytes. That's only an increase of 4.66 megabytes. So it did not increase the whole amount or the whole addition of the three families together. Now after this, when I went to the other file where I arrayed everything, and I have 7,500 instances of these families, the total amount of size for that file was 14.9, and that was only an increase of 2.7 megabytes from this test project. So basically it does not calculate like every single time. It's not going to multiply the instances times the file size. Once you have in the project, that's pretty much how much you're going to get. And the rest is just because of the amount of instances in there, but that's not increase the same amount, if that makes sense. So having geometry that is repeated or reused is a good option as well. As an example, we have the super door configurator. These doors were designed in this concept where the panels and the frames are shared content that can be loaded in the file individually. And that's a good thing, because instead of loading it individually in each of the families, it gets loaded only once in the project, and that gets reused in different configurations of the main assemblies. This helps reduce or keep the file size down and not increase it every time. So that's just one example that we use these shared families and reusable content as well. Okay, so that's just one more thing that I wanted to share in my process of this test. Makes a difference? Yes, it does. We saw that. So again, just to recap a little bit here on what we can do. Have a master file, something to look up and reference back to how it works, and then have a test file with all the families loaded. Take notes of that, how that works, how easy it is to change between views, and then create your couple of families, or in my case I created 3. Would have been enough with 2, but have those families either in the same file or create a file for each of them. Do the same test and processes every time. If it's in the same file, create your filters and the views and place those families individually there and compare them. So let's see if let's see some of the other questions here. Again, there are some questions related to changing the visual style, which is it does affect, of course, the way we're gonna move around. But based on what we've seen with the clients when they share the projects and we see them, barely I see people working in wireframe. And yes, we can change this to wireframe or hidden in order to move faster. But people really want just to see the 3D representation and the materials and these families, or the project themselves in order to move. See, notice that when I change to wireframe, it's still fast. But remember also that I did not see too much difference between the three options in the 3D, because the geometry is on in 3D all the time. So that doesn't make too much difference. If I go back to this view, it's the same thing where I had placed it as hidden view, and if I put in wireframe, of course it's going to work differently as well. Okay. And the other ones is some suggestions that I will consider as well, and analyzing more in detail. So if you have any other more questions, feel free to include them here. Otherwise, I want to thank you